What happens when one of music's most legendary divas sits across from America's favorite weatherman, and everything goes completely off the rails? You're about to find out, because what unfolded during this morning's Today Show interview will leave you stunned. Before we jump into the drama, don't forget to hit subscribe and tell me in the comments what you think really set off this explosive exchange. The morning started like any other at Studio 1A. Al Roker, fresh off the weather report, was settling in for what looked like a routine celebrity chat. His guest, Chaka Khan, the 10-time Grammy winner, queen of funk and living legend, there to promote her brand new memoir. Her team had specifically asked for Al. His warm, conversational style was supposed to make this a safe space to explore the personal stories behind the book. Good morning. I'm Al Roker, and we're here with the incomparable Chaka Khan. Al began with his signature smile. Chaka, dressed in a flowing purple kaftan, her iconic curls framing her face, nodded graciously. Thank you for having me, Al. It's always a pleasure. The first stretch of the interview went smoothly. Al asked about her childhood in Chicago, her early days with Rufus, and what inspired her to write so openly about her life. Chaka answered thoughtfully, recalling her rise to fame and the barriers she faced as a black woman in the music industry of the 1970s. Your book really opens up about some painful chapters, Al said, leaning in. You write extensively about your struggles with addiction and how that affected your family. Yes, Chaka replied, her tone turning serious. I felt it was important to be honest. Too many people, especially in our community, suffer in silence. If my story helps even one person find their way to recovery, then the pain of revisiting those memories was worth it. Al nodded. That takes tremendous courage. And speaking of courage, you've also never been afraid to speak your mind about the music industry. In your book, you're very critical of how record labels treated artists, especially artists of color, during your peak years. Chaka's eyes lit with fire. Critical? No, Al, I told the truth. The exploitation was deliberate and systemic. Labels signed us, made millions off our talent, and left us with scraps. I watched brilliant artists destroyed by contracts that were nothing short of modern-day slavery. The air shifted. Al straightened in his chair. That's a very strong comparison. Slavery! It's the truth. Chaka shot back, her voice rising. When you sign away your publishing rights for next to nothing, when you're forced to record songs you hate, when you have no control over your art. What would you call it? Al treaded carefully. I understand your frustration with unfair business practices, but don't you think comparing it to slavery might be, well, a bit extreme? The temperature in the studio seemed to drop 10 degrees. Chaka's expression hardened as she fixed him with a piercing stare that made even the crew glance nervously at one another. Extreme? She repeated, her voice deliberate. Al, with all due respect, you've spent your career in television, on networks that treated you well. You've never had your culture stolen. You've never had your royalties manipulated. You've never been told your life's work was a product to be exploited. Al lifted his hands in a calming gesture. I'm not minimizing your experience, Chaka. I just think there might be more appropriate ways to describe it, without invoking the horrors of actual slavery. More appropriate for who? Chaka demanded, her voice now carrying the full force of the powerhouse who had commanded stages for decades. More appropriate for your comfortable morning show audience, who don't want to hear the ugly truth about how their favorite music was made. The studio went dead silent. The only sound was the low hum of the cameras, still rolling. Al glanced at the producers behind the glass, his polished composure slipping, as he realized this was no longer the interview anyone had planned. I think we're getting a bit off track here, Al said, his voice carefully measured as he tried to steer the interview back to safe territory. Let's talk about your new music. You've been collaborating with some younger artists lately. Don't you dare try to change the subject." Chaka cut in, her finger stabbing the air toward him. "You opened this door when you questioned my choice of words. You want to talk about what's appropriate. What's appropriate is acknowledging that this industry has a long, ugly history of exploiting black artists. Pretending otherwise is willful ignorance." For the first time, Al's legendary composure cracked. "Look, I respect your perspective, but this is a morning show. Our viewers tune in for uplifting content, not lectures on systemic oppression in the entertainment business." The studio seemed to shrink around them. Chaka's voice rose, filling every corner of the room. "You think my truth is a lecture? That my lived experience is some sort of scolding? That's the problem, Al. The moment a black woman speaks with passion about injustice, she's called angry. She's called too much." "That's not what I meant at all," Al interrupted, though his voice lacked conviction. "Then what did you mean?" Chaka leaned forward, her eyes blazing. "Because what I hear is that you're more concerned with keeping your audience comfortable than actually hearing what I have to say." Al's face flushed. The genial, easygoing weatherman millions adored was gone, replaced by a man scrambling to regain control. "Chaka, I've been doing this for over 30 years, he snapped, his voice edged with steel. "I've interviewed thousands of people from every background imaginable. I know how to conduct a respectful interview. Do you?" Chaka fired back instantly. "Because right now it feels like you're policing my language. Like you want me to soften my message so it's more palatable for your viewers. That's not respect, Al. That's control." Behind the cameras, producers gestured frantically, but neither guest nor host seemed to notice. They were locked in now. "I'm not trying to control anything," Al said firmly, the smile that once disarmed presidents nowhere to be seen. "I'm trying to have a productive conversation, but when you come in here throwing out inflammatory comparisons and accusations, it makes dialogue impossible." "Inflammatory?" Chaka's voice cracked like a whip. "The truth is inflammatory to you? That I lost millions because an executive claimed my music as his property? That's inflammatory? That I couldn't even perform my own songs without paying royalties to men who never wrote a single note? That's inflammatory? That's not what I said." Al insisted, his voice climbing higher, thinner, betraying strain. "I'm talking about the way you're presenting these issues. There's a difference between sharing your story and making broad generalizations about an entire industry." Chaka let out a sharp laugh, cold, humorless. "Broad generalizations? Al, do you know how many of my peers from the 70s and 80s are living in poverty today? Do you know how many died broke while labels still profit off their work? This isn't a generalization. This is a pattern." "I sympathize with that," Al said, leaning back in his chair as if her intensity had a physical force. "But coming on national television and making these sweeping statements without nuance, without context, it's irresponsible." The word irresponsible snapped through the air like static. Crew members glanced nervously at each other, some even taking a step back. Chaka's eyes narrowed to slits. Her voice dropped, low and deliberate. "Irresponsible?" The silence that followed felt like the moment before a storm hits. "You want to talk about irresponsible?" Chaka's voice cut through the studio like a blade. "What's irresponsible is sitting in your comfortable chair, collecting your comfortable salary, and telling a woman who has lived through decades of exploitation that she's wrong for speaking the truth." "That's not fair," Al protested, his voice tight, almost pleading. "You don't know what I've faced in this industry. You don't know my experiences." "You're right, I don't," Chaka conceded, her tone razor-sharp. "But I do know you've never had a record executive tell you your natural hair wasn't marketable. I know you've never watched someone else get rich off a song you poured your soul into. And I know you've never been told to smile more, be more grateful, be less angry about injustice." Al's jaw clenched. "You think because I'm successful now, I haven't faced discrimination? You think I haven't had to fight for respect? I've been the target of racist attacks, of harassment, of threats. Don't you dare lecture me about struggle. Then you should understand better than anyone. Chaka fired back, her words scorching. Understand why speaking truth to power matters. And yet here you are, doing their work for them, by trying to silence me. I'm not silencing anyone, Al said, his voice rising to match hers. But there's a time and a place. A morning show interview about your memoir is not the venue for a political manifesto. Political manifesto? Chaka's laugh was sharp, bitter. Talking about my own life is now political? That's exactly what I mean. The moment we tell uncomfortable truths, suddenly we're too political, too inappropriate, too much. The air in Studio 1A was so thick you could feel it. Camera operators glanced nervously at producers, unsure whether to keep rolling or cut. Al rubbed a hand over his face, frustration etched into every line. I came here wanting to celebrate your incredible career, your book, your music. Instead, we're having an argument about industry politics our viewers didn't sign up for. Our viewers? Chaka repeated, her tone dripping with disdain. You mean your viewers? The ones you're so desperate to protect from anything real, from anything uncomfortable. God forbid they think about something deeper than the weather forecast over their morning coffee. Al's face flushed purple. That's unfair and you know it. The Today Show covers serious issues all the time. Social justice, inequality, systemic problems. Safe issues! Chaka snapped back. Sanitized issues? The ones you can control, edit, wrap in a neat little bow. But when someone like me sits here and tells the raw, unfiltered truth about exploitation, suddenly it's inappropriate. The raw truth. Al's composure was gone, his voice hard. You came here to promote a book, and instead you've turned this into a personal attack on me. On this show, you've questioned my character, my integrity, my understanding of discrimination. Chaka's chair screeched as she stood, sudden and forceful, the sound making everyone in the studio jump. You're damn right I'm angry, Al. I'm angry that after 50 years in this business, I still have to justify my right to speak. I'm angry that even with my success, I'm still told to tone it down, calm down, be more reasonable. Al rose too, towering over her, though somehow it was Chaka whose presence filled the space. Nobody is telling you to calm down, but if you can't have a civil conversation without turning it into a confrontation, then maybe television interviews aren't the right platform for you. The silence that followed was suffocating. Every person in Studio 1A held their breath. Chaka's voice dropped to a low, dangerous register. Television interviews aren't the right platform for me. Her eyes burned into him. Al Roker, I've been doing television interviews since before you knew what a weather map was. I've sat across from Johnny Carson, Oprah Winfrey, Barbara Walters, and not one of them, not a single one, ever had the audacity to tell me where I belonged. Al realized instantly he'd crossed a line, but pride locked his jaw. That's not what I meant. I'm talking about productive conversations versus creating controversy for the sake of controversy. For the sake of controversy? Chaka's fury erupted. You think I came here to create drama? You think I enjoy defending my right to speak about my life? This isn't some performance for me, Al. This is my reality. Decades of pain, frustration, betrayal. And you just dismissed it as inappropriate for your precious morning show. The producers were gesturing frantically to cut, but the cameras kept rolling. This wasn't just an interview anymore. It was a showdown. I never dismissed your pain, Al said, but his voice cracked under the strain. I'm just trying to understand why everything has to become a battle. Why can't we just have a normal conversation about your book, your music, your achievements? Al pressed, because my achievements don't exist in a vacuum. Chaka shot back, her voice now carrying the weight of decades of accumulated frustration. My music, my career, my book, it's all connected to the struggle. You can't separate the art from the artist's experience, and you sure as hell can't separate my experience from the systematic oppression that shaped it. Al threw his hands up in exasperation. Fine, but does every single conversation have to turn into a dissertation on oppression? Can't we talk about the joy, the success, the positive aspects of your incredible career? The positive aspects. Chakan's laugh was bitter, sharp. You want to talk about positive aspects while ignoring the foundation of pain and struggle it was all built on. That's not celebration, Al. That's erasure. That's asking me to perform happiness while pretending the suffering never happened. That's not what I'm asking for. Al insisted, though his voice was edging toward desperation. I'm asking for balance, for a conversation that doesn't alienate half our audience before we even get to the good stuff. There it is, Chaka Khan said, pointing straight at him, accusation blazing in her eyes. There's your real concern. Not my story, not my truth, not my decades of experience. Your audience. Your ratings. Your comfort level. Everything has to be filtered through what Al Roker and his morning show viewers can handle. Al's face flushed, the mask of professional calm cracking. You know what? Yes, I do care about our audience. I care about the millions of people who trust us to start their day with information and inspiration, not with angry tirades about how terrible everything is. Angry tirades. Chakan's voice rose to a crescendo that seemed to shake the very walls of the studio. 50 years of fighting for respect, recognition, basic human dignity. And you call it an angry tirade? You know what, Al? You just proved every single point I've been trying to make. She tore at her microphone with trembling hands, her movements sharp and decisive. You want your comfortable morning show? Your sanitized version of black success that doesn't challenge anybody or make anyone think too hard. Then you can have it without me. Chaka, please, Al said, his voice breaking as panic replaced anger. Let's just take a breath. Try to find some common ground here. Common ground? She looked at him with pure disdain as she dropped the microphone onto her chair. The common ground is gone? It disappeared the moment you decided my lived experience was too uncomfortable for your audience. It vanished when you chose your show's image over respecting the woman sitting across from you. Al made one last, desperate attempt. I do respect you, your talent, your contributions, your strength in overcoming adversity. I respect all of it. Chaka Khan paused at the edge of the set and turned, her expression a mix of disappointment and fury. You respect the version of me that fits neatly into your box, the grateful entertainer who smiles, talks about her hits, and maybe shares a sanitized story that makes people feel good about how far we've come. But the moment I show you the real me, the woman who refuses to sugarcoat the truth, suddenly, I'm inappropriate. That's not true, Al protested weakly. It's completely true, she fired back. And the worst part is you don't even realize you're doing it. You've been conditioned to expect black women to perform gratitude and softness. When we show up with fire and truth, you can't handle it. The studio was silent, save for the hum of cameras and equipment. Crew members, producers, everyone froze, watching history unfold. I hope your audience enjoys their comfortable morning, Chaka Khan said coldly. But don't ever book another black artist on this show and expect them to perform for your comfort. Some of us have too much self-respect for that. With regal bearing, she turned and walked toward the exit, the queen of funk leaving her throne behind. Al stood frozen, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water, helpless to stop her. Chaka, wait, he called out one last time, but she didn't even glance back. We'll be right back, he said weakly to the cameras, his voice barely audible. But Chaka Khan was already gone, leaving a studio full of shocked faces, and one very shaken weatherman who had just learned that some storms can't be predicted, can't be controlled, and definitely can't be weathered with a smile. The Queen of Funk had spoken her truth, and no amount of morning show politeness was going to change that. What do you think really triggered this explosive confrontation? Was it Al's attempt to police her language? Or was something deeper at play? Hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments what you believe was the real breaking point in this incredible showdown.